Hello, everybody, and welcome to your instant match reaction for Everton nil, AFC Bournemouth, to give them their proper title. 3 over in the United States for the first game of the Premier League Summer Series tour. Myself and Dave Downey drew the short straw from the Blue Room cohort today to do this podcast. It is just past 11 o'clock here in the UK. Dave, at half time, I was thinking, I'm glad I've stayed up for this. I'm looking forward to talking about what we've done in the first half here. I think there's some good signs, which I'm sure we'll get into, but the way in which the roof caved in there in that second half. I mean, the first goal from their point of view is a pretty good one, but after that, I mean, the wheels came off in spectacular fashion, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, after 45 minutes, we certainly wouldn't be saying it was the short straw, would we? Because it was it was decent. We looked effective.
I was having a glass of wine on the couch. I was like, "This is India." I was playing brilliantly. Better looked sharp. Alcaraz was in the game. I was like, "This is great. Who needs new players?"
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Like, I didn't even need to look at the bench and think what's going on. You can give that Barry back at the 40 million back in the bank and have a look at someone else who might get a game. It was all nice and nice. What sort of late afternoon in New York or New Jersey, and thinking that everything's going smoothly, and then it was quite alarming how we capitulated, isn't it, when we started in the second half. And what the most overwhelming thing I got from that full 90, obviously a Jekyll and Hyde performance, but in the second half, the drop-off was ridiculous. And obviously I understand the climate's a lot different to what we'll see over here, certainly going forward from August onwards. But it wasn't impressive at all, was it? And I keep on counting down the days, Matt. We're just over 3 weeks away. To see Everton to sort of fall off a cliff, whatever analogy you want there, towards the end of a game against Bournemouth. It always seems to be Bournemouth seem the side that always seem to do us over at some point. But they look remarkably stronger than us after less than an hour.
Yeah, I think the context is obviously important in all this, isn't it? Like, I think you look at the squads. I think I'm right in saying, like, I'm not had to check this, but on the broadcast then on Sky said that Bournemouth changed their entire team, and we had 7 lads who I think who played the full 90 or something close to the full 90. And at this stage of the pre-season, and you mentioned the conditions there. Obviously, they had the cooling breaks, didn't they? Because it was so hot. Like, that's going to count for something, isn't it? I think it's no surprise that when they brought on fresh lads, and probably like a lot of their first team as well, like players like Semenyo and who else came on? Scott came on, didn't he? And Zabani, the centre back, who's been linked to like a £70 million move to PSG. Like, they brought on a lot of their better players, really, and up against our tired lads who were who'd already played for 70 minutes or whatever it was in those conditions. Like, no excuse for the goals. I mean, obviously Patterson makes a howler, O'Brien makes a howler, which has been pretty uncharacteristic for him. And well, certainly since Moyes has come to the club and what he's done pretty well and been pretty consistent. But I think it just goes to show how much fitness is a factor in these games, really. And you just saw the difference, I think, between a bunch of lads who are fit but are still working to get that full fitness up against, certainly in the last half an hour, a bunch of lads who are working towards that but hadn't played an hour in those sweltering conditions.
Yeah, I mean, there's I think Sean Dyche, probably a quote from his book, isn't it? There's fitness and then there's match day fitness.
Dyche fit. We're not Dyche fit yet.
Not Dyche fit, match fit now because he's no longer there. I felt that when I was watching what Bournemouth are like as they were going through the motions of a game, obviously in a positive manner for them. Our lads seem to have that feeling towards the end of it. I mean, we kept Alcaraz on, finished the game, didn't he? I mean, look, I know you emphasised on Twitter, it's pretty obvious what the solution is here that we tend to speak about every single day now as we close in towards the start of the campaign. But let's try and stay away from that and go with what we've got at the moment. And you're right. I mean, the goals they scored, but 2 of the 3 anyway, were down to our own faults. So, okay, let's scratch that one off then. You're going to make mistakes. If you're going to make mistakes, you do it in a pre-season, don't you? In how we penetrated them as well, I was quite impressed with it in the first half. Just never really got a decent chance to be a shot from further out. that's something else I think that we need to be looking at doing. Barry came on towards the end as well, and I'm just throwing at things and random stuff here. He came on at the end, looked like he held up the ball well. Beto starts to grow into the game too. But I thought the shape we were playing as well was really interesting. To go with a 5, which obviously everybody, well, I'd say most fans will criticise that Everton never play with a back 5. Seemed to work out okay in the initial stages of the game. Thought it looked quite comfortable. James Garner thought was great, sort of on that right wing back side, whichever you want to call it. McNeil too. These are things that will going forward now, and you'll see a hell of a lot of difference, I hope, when you get to Chicago next week. But when you look at how we set up, I think it's encouraging to see Moyes has got different ideas, that he's willing to mix things up in there. He's willing to try other things, because if we'd have gone there, played the rigid, standard Everton performance, in inverted commas, that you'd expect from Moyes, then that result we've just gone through there and went through the motions in the second half would feel a hell of a lot worse than it does right now. To me, it was quite refreshing for most of the lads that we saw. Just ran out of gas, and I guess there's a lot of circumstances, like we mentioned there, given the climate and everything, where that's going to happen. The fact it didn't happen with Bournemouth makes it look even worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose, ultimately we had one centre-half playing, Brian, and, we had two full-backs playing as other centre-backs and then two wide midfielders. So you had one wide midfielder playing as one wing-back and one central midfielder playing as the other wing-back. So
yeah,
it's like, it felt like one of those where like it maybe worked and it took, but start again. It felt like one of those where it worked and just until it didn't, and like it felt like as soon as Bournemouth got in at our time and had time to figure it out, and I think Iraola actually got interviewed by Sky Sports coming out after our time, and he said like the system's maybe caught us off guard a little bit. We need to play in behind into the space a little bit more. Like as soon as they got together and had time to look at it and think about how they were going to combat it and where to target us, like that's where it all kind of fell apart. But especially you look at a situation there where our back 5 that finishes the game, our wing backs are Tyler Onyango and Dwight McNeil. You've got Nathan Patterson playing at centre back with Mikalenko and Jacob O'Brien. Like it was a mess of a defence, wasn't it, in that sense? And whilst they could cling on for a little bit in that first half and do okay to a degree, it felt like one of them. As soon as fresh players came on, it was always going to be really tough for that to kind of stay intact. But albeit, it wasn't like we got passed around and pulled all over the place. It was just Patterson making a big mistake for that goal, O'Brien making a big mistake for the other one. But I asked a lot of people on Twitter, Dave, about, well, a lot of people responded to my tweets on Twitter about what they want to talk about. And Patterson is the name that's come up the most, really, in that regard. And I think it was weird tonight because obviously he played as the third centre back in a back 3, and I actually thought, like, for someone who was a full back, the things that he had to do that weren't very full-back-ish, he did relatively well. And then that one moment where he has to be a right-back up against the left winger in Atara, he makes a complete mess of it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he doesn't throw himself at the ball. He's easily just sort of
just
brushed out the way. Yeah, it is, and it just continuously adds to the piles upon piles of excuses I used to think fans used to make about him not being any good. And I keep saying in my mind, Warren mentioned, didn't he, in our WhatsApp group, he desperately, and we all do desperately want him to kick on. We bought a player there who they adore in Scotland. Like, Rangers are basically holding on as tight as they possibly could before we actually went on and bought him. Had flashes of being a decent prospect of a Premier League right back, and it's just never happened for him. And you do get to a point where you're like, this is where you sort of cut ties now. You've got to do something about it. But then, of course, what's the alternative? And yeah, I mean, surely somebody who's been a Premier League, an experienced, let's say, you call him an experienced Premier League player now, wouldn't you? Because he's played over 50 games for us, I think I'm right in saying. You're looking at that and then putting in the way in which he was. That can't be strange to him, being put into that position. It can't be something that he's like, well, I've never done this before. In training, he must do it a million times. Yet when he comes into a match like that, he just looks like he's frozen, and he just doesn't know what he's doing in that position. And look, I'll again go back to what I said. I like that Moyes has tried a few different things, but tell you what, if we come to that being something we have to do against Leeds, that's going to be a really miserable start to the season, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think Keane's just precautionary, isn't he? Like with that in mind. But obviously, Tarkowski's on the sideline there, and smiling. I think he's been involved, hasn't he? So hopefully we'll get to see him before the end of the tour. But in regards to the good stuff, Dave, and we'll finish up by talking about transfers and stuff, but the good stuff in the first half, just nice to watch Njai sort of in full flow again. I think there was probably like 20 minutes of that half, wasn't it, where he was just magnificent in the way in which he was carrying the ball, doing the thing he does where he gets his back into the defender and spins and carries the ball. But I think there are times when I love him, but I think just that way to pass sometimes he just doesn't always get quite right. I think if he did, he would go up a completely different level in his game. But after scoring 10 goals last season, being our best attacker, it feels like for all the talk about Fofana and obviously we signed a new centre forward. I think another way Everton get better in the final third next year is by eking out a little bit more from him, and he looks like he's capable of it.
Oh, he absolutely is. Yeah, I think that's when you're looking at the way Moyes will look at this and getting certain players in and around him at the time, where get him to escape, get into some space, because the thing he's tremendous at is the thing you don't want him doing too much of, and that is when you get 2 or 3 players in and around him. And he's amazing. On Twitter, I put it's fantastic to see him, really unique the way he's that small of a lad. He looks like he'd win free kicks over and over again, but it's like he doesn't want to. He carries on, he keeps his feet up, and just takes the piss. It's almost like he's that kind of player, and you don't see it much nowadays. He looks like he enjoys his game. It looks like he enjoys being able to do what he wants to do and having that level of freedom. And yeah, I think you're right. I think when you've got a player who is the front and centre of everything we need to do and what we've been doing in terms of attack, our top goal scorer in the season. I hate to say it, but clubs get wise of that. That's why it's the top flight. That's why it's the Premier League. Clubs do get wise of that, and he's been brilliant for us. I can't think of a game where he's sort of gone missing too much, and his level, the bar that he's on, is a lot higher than most others. But then, like I say, when you've only got one player who does that, then if they nullify him, what else have you got? And I do like when that piece of skill there, and the crowd were loving it over there, weren't they? When he's basically they're literally trying to take him down. They're trying to give away a foul, and yet he just stayed on his feet. And I just love his attitude about it. Everything in and around him, it's positivity, isn't it? Everything that he does, it feels really positive as a player for us. And you're right, it's what goes on around him more that I want to take a burden off his shoulders as much as he probably would want to himself. There's still a hell of a lot more we need to do and be able to get more out of him. I think you're spot on in saying that there are aspects of his game that we've probably not even seen, that he could do so much more for us, but he can't because he's that restricted, given the positional play he's got to stick with, given he'll have to stick to the touchline, aspects of it where he's the only outlet for us. I'd love it if he had a little bit more freedom, if he's got a player in and around him. Maybe Alcaraz can sort of drift out there. But yeah, I mean, you've got to take the shackles off him even further.
Yeah, I think all of the front three, by the front three, I mean Njai, Alcaraz, and Beto, all did well in that first half to varying degrees. But I always the counter attacks worked to an extent, didn't they? But I always think the thing with that system, whether you call it 3-4-3 or 5-4-1, is that when you do the counter attack, it always feels like you have that one extra player short because you've got 5 across the back effectively. You've got the one striker. So if you always feel like you're missing a player when you do those breaks forward, and it felt like that a few times today. We got into some really good positions and just didn't quite have the numbers, or we didn't quite have that player who could find the way to pass. And we had one big chance to be better when Alcaraz played it through, and the keeper makes a good save from it. But aside from that, certainly in the second half, nothing. And listen, we're 3 games into the pre-season now, Dave. We scored 1 goal. It was a penalty against Accrington. I mean, that's why just bringing this on to transfers. Obviously, it look like they're going to bring in Azanu from Bayern Munich. That feels like it's very close to being done, since they're having a medical and should be joining the tour. There's been links to Fofana today, who there's been linked to some massive clubs in Europe, and I don't know. Feels like one of those which you're sort of looking at cautiously because you don't want to get too drawn in, and then it goes a different way. But going forward, I know we've spoken about the defence and the issues there, but going forward still feels like a massive area we need to look at. And even when you look at players like they brought on today, like Semenyo and Scott, and they had Brooks in the starting line of Evan Nilsson, teams around mid-table in the Premier League have all got real high class attackers, and you look at our options, and when we've got the odd, a gem like Njai and a player like Alcaraz who could maybe develop into something, it feels like we're so far short of other teams, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that all of our podcasts have sort of headed towards that point of what alternatives have we got in order to mix things up, and I think that point you make there is probably at the epicenter of what we're talking about here in terms of how we're able to counter attack. And you're right that there's no additional player there. That just feels like that additional layoff's not there, and it's so frustrating to watch because there's no fluence to it. We'll get the ball, we'll win it back, fine, get it in a deep midfield role and say just run forward with it. But then he has to hesitate and then he has to either go square or go back. There's nobody else there who we can lay it off to who's just, powering the way forwards. And that's something that you add to the list of several things that we refer to every time with our shows about the transfers because that's front and centre of what we need to be doing. And like you say there, with the potential of going to get Fofana, someone like that. I mean, they're sort of dream signings to me. I mean, I have to admit, I think I'd be astonished if we get him. Given the big clubs that seem to be fishing around them, it'd be a bit of a coup if Everton went and did that. But they are the exact kind of players. The thing that I take from that, even if you don't go and sign him, is they're paying their attention to what is exactly needed. We're not talking about going and getting an additional centre back. We're not talking about going and getting a defensive midfield player when we have those, or maybe we do need more of them, but the priority are the ones that they're going to look at now, which is much more refreshing than thinking that they're just basically going after whoever's available. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out there. But again, just going back to the point you made there, I think there'll be a lot more of a tempo if we've got a team that can do that. We're not gonna be a side that has the most possession in games. Which again I'm comfortable with because it's generally in the last few years how we've actually won games is having less of the ball in the opposition. If Everton are able to sort of to pin that down a little bit better, then you're keeping your clean sheets. The defensive side of it's absolutely fine, and it has been. The frustrating thing for all of us, like you just said there, we haven't scored the goal in open play, and you've got Beto celebrating a penalty like he's won the Champions League.
Yeah, it's. I just feel like, I hope, and like I'm not sitting here by any means saying that people at Everton have not been doing anything because everyone would have been working really hard, but it feels like the last 24 hours, like I said, this is just gone 11 o'clock here, and I think in the States last night, Moyes was on stage, wasn't he, in front of a lot of fans saying, "I want 9 or 10 players." Obviously, we've had a lot of links today to various.
And how many he said was it?
Yeah, he wants between 9 and 10.
9 and 10. Wow. I mean, these things matter, and I think we might have touched upon it a couple of times. And since he's been in, he's a lot more open the way in which he speaks. But that's staggering for him to come out and say that sort of thing. I'm not used to him coming out and being so open about what Everton needs, about their approaching players. But him to come out and say that many, Matt, is that sort of him taking a nod towards the owners and saying, listen, or the rest of the team that he's got in and around him? Is he basically saying to them, look, lads, we need to get a move on here and start getting some players in? I'll show you what it's like tonight. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was a bit annoyed at the situation now, to be honest, like, because it feels like every time since he was on the pitch at Goodison on that farewell, and how he spoke after that, it feels like pretty much every time he's gone on the record with the media, he's mentioned. He's been bold, hasn't he? And talked about transfers.
Yeah.
We're going to try and sign players. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And it's all been very positive and upbeat. And I imagine there'll be part of him that thinks that, I don't know what necessarily been promised, but he'll be thinking, I don't want to be made to look a little bit silly here by being so bold and talking about it so much. So it might be one of them where, he's done loads of media. Like obviously Saturday now, we don't know what he said after the game. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what he does. Certainly in regards to the links of players we've had today. But I think he'd be getting a little bit annoyed about it. Like I think as much as we all maybe want to go, let's stay calm and keep our heads and not panic too much. Like this week, this 10 days they've got in the States was a massive opportunity, wasn't it? And I think we all kind of saw this summer as a situation where there's going to be a lot of new faces off the pitch, going to be a lot of new faces in the squad. And like this week would be sort of nectar in regards to getting everyone together and learning about the teammates and just having that bit of a bond. And it feels like if we are going to sign 9 or 10 players, the vast majority of them are not even going to be involved in this tour. And then you've got to try and integrate them in the last couple of weeks before the new season starts. So
Yeah.
it's not ideal, I suppose, but it is also as well, I think, the reality of where we are and where we've been over the last few years too. Is, as much as we've got a great new stadium to move into, we're all very excited about it. We've been a team that's been battling relegation, and where did we finish last season? 15th, was it? Something like that. Like,
Yeah.
we're
Go on, sorry.
we're still not like regards to the Premier League, we're still not one of the biggest, most attractive propositions, really, are we? So it's still a bit of an uphill task, but in the same breath, I think the manager would have wanted more done by this point, certainly.
Oh, massively so. Like I was saying, they're completely different. I mean, I think we mentioned when he came back, he just like completely mellow fella, now completely different to the one that we all used to go and see when he was first Everton manager. But yeah, I do think behind the scenes there, he must be really frustrated with what's going on. Otherwise, he wouldn't come out and say anything in the media. If you've got a manager like David Moyes, the David Moyes that we've known and the David Moyes that we've seen since he came back, for him to come out and say these things to the media, I mean, it's him. It's real sort of attention that he wants putting towards this. And the concern for me is when you're changing your complete system of recruitment. That's all well and good, and you can get really excited about that because of the absolute nonsense that we've spent money on in years gone by with Machiri and all that sort of thing. It's great. Yeah, okay, we've got a brand new system put in. You've got a team of people who go and look and investigate players, see what they like, see who we want to go and get. Yeah, great, you've got all that. Well, go and do it then, lads, because we've got 3 weeks till the season starts. I hate the feeling that we go to Leeds. I put it on Twitter at half time. If that team we started with today is the team that started against Leeds, how would you feel? And I'd be concerned if it was that, Matt. I'd be concerned.
I think it'll be very similar to the team that started at Blackburn the other day. Obviously, maybe Tarkowski coming in if he's fit and Patterson.
But how much of a worry is that to you, though? I'd be if we go to Leeds like that, because it's a hard enough first away game, I think, on a Monday night. Because
that 11 necessarily is not like a. I suppose that 11 it showed it could do well at times last season. Like a back was to go there and not get beat. That 11 on the opening day, but it's just the squad, isn't it? Like it's so short, and like I think we can get like a good, decent, sort of mid to, top half of the bottom half of the table team out there. Like that 11 feels like about in that range, but it's like what's the game against these last season in that Goodison game showed, didn't it, exactly why you need more players on the bench now, because they brought on 5 players, I think, in the last 20 minutes and just scored 3 goals in 5 minutes and won the game. Like that's the way it is now. So you need those options on the bench, and we've just not got them anymore. Like, because I saw Mick Reno tweeting during the game saying he just couldn't believe how long it took us to make a substitution in a friendly game. Like that's mad, and it's purely down to lack of options. And I think you look at players like Keith who were there today, Clark, who obviously did well in the Accrington and Blackburn games, didn't even get on the pitch, did they? Like, and I think that probably goes to show really where Moyes thinks they're actually at in the grand scheme of things. So, as much as we don't want to make everything about transfers, it feels like everything is going to be about transfers now, isn't it? Until we make some transfers.
I think it has a bit of a dominoes effect as well to these lads that are still there, because I think it's pretty obvious that they certainly still wouldn't be first team or associated with the first team squad Everton plays. They'd be out on loan. You look at Armstrong, maybe you do keep him in and around because he looks like he's got something that he could put into Premier League performances, be a player that we have on the bench. But, again, if you're feeling going into the new season, if you've got a bench like that where you've got a load of young kids there, that's much more of concern. As talented as they might be, they're not ready. They're not going to be players that you can just throw in. And if they are, you sort of throw and hope at what you're going to do this season. And the interesting point I think you meant there, and we spoke a couple of times about this, and Roger Armstrong was really good talking about it, was in terms of, if you look at the way in which the Premier League structures, there's basically, he's saying, is the sort of 3 sections of it. And Everton is sort of in the middle one there when you look at clubs like Brighton, Palace, Brentford, clubs like that, who are probably competing for the same kind of players. So Everton need to get ahead of that. Everton need to be involved with that level of recruitment, because you're going to get clubs in and around that who are going to go in for the same thing. So when I see stuff like, and look, it's probably typical in our listeners style me saying this, but when you look at us going for a player there who's he's going to be a top level athlete coming to Everton, a big name signing, a marquee signing. Americans is what they'd say, isn't it? A marquee signing coming to Everton like Fofana. That to me is a little bit more pie in the sky, and it I don't know if I'm probably get criticised for saying this. Who Everton should be looking at getting, that feels to me like it's something that we're not yet ready for. If you understand what I mean, I might be wording this completely wrong, but what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot more that Everton need than just getting in a player in the middle who you're taking to America and he's the one that stands in the middle signing autographs. And the only player that Everton know. Because, for instance, when you're going over to the States and Everton, this is brilliant. We've been crying out to do this sort of thing for a long, long time, getting out and about across the world, selling Everton. Great that the owners are involved in that sort of thing. We should be great at it. But the conversation I've been having with a couple of mates is, well, you take Everton out to the States, who's the player you look at, you think they're going to be going straight to him to get his autograph? If you want to sell Everton to a fan base, you want to, I don't support a Premier League club yet. Who do we go for? Everton. Okay. Well, who's the player that's going to be the poster boy for that? And we don't have that, but I don't think that we necessarily need that right now. We need a team that's full of multiple grafters, I think, with the little pinch of quality that we've got in the likes of Ndiaye, but it feels a little bit lost at the moment in the middle. It feels very, very flat, and maybe that is the solution. You go and get a big signing. We've gone and done that with a striker. We'll see how he goes. But again, he's a very young one, so I think there's a caveat to going and buying players for a lot of money. So you don't get Fofana yet, immense talent comes in, pressure's on his shoulders, and he's coming into an Everton side. The other side of this, he's coming into an Everton side that hasn't got enough in and around him to think you're going to get the best out of him yet. Just the same way you explained there about Ndiaye.
Oh yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I also think if you go get a player like him, you just do it. I think, but we'll have to wait and see.
Oh yeah, if we're able, don't get me wrong, if we're able to go and do it, and ever can get a player like that, fantastic. You go and do it because we've got a few quid behind us. But when he comes in, he can't run the show on his own. Like Ndiaye can't run the show on his own. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. About how that goes anyway. The next few days could be interesting. Certainly after that.
You might see him out there next week, Matt, if we get him sorted. Right?
Yeah, Malik will be in the AJ Hudson's with us. Talking he's around. But no, listen, there's going to be loads of transfer stuff coming out. And we'll see what the manager has to say after that about all that sort of thing as well. I'm sure it'll be very interesting indeed. Just usual house admin before we wrap up today. Watch us on YouTube. Do hit like, do hit subscribe. Me and Dave stayed up till 11:30 on Saturday night to record this podcast in the UK time. So the least people could do for us is subscribe and like. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about any of that we've spoken about today. Same goes if you are listening on Apple or on Spotify. You can leave us a rating and a review on there. And yeah, just a reminder, myself, Paddy, Mose and Rob are going to be in Chicago from Tuesday until Saturday. So if you're knocking around, do get in touch with us and let us know in the comments. We're going to be on the boat trip on Tuesday and then at AJ Hudson's from 2 p.m. ahead of the game against West Ham United on Wednesday. The event starting there is at 10 a.m. in the morning. So we'll be around the day for that. So I'm sure we'll see people. We'll be on stage. We're basically going to be having a drink with loads of blues. Looking forward to it. Should be a class day. So yeah, get in touch with us if you're in Chicago. Hopefully we'll see an Anderson player score a goal for open play. That'll be wonderful. So yeah, cheers to everyone who's got in touch already saying they're going to be there. Looking forward to seeing everybody. We'll have Blue Monday out on Monday. We'll have Byline out on Tuesday morning as well. So tons of stuff coming over the next few days. That's it from me and Dave from the instant match reaction for Everton 0, Bournemouth 3. Up the top east. We'll speak to you again soon.